Coming up next this week in computer hardware, the Xbox One has launched. Consoles versus gaming PC builds. How fast does an SSD make the PS4? The FCC is going to allow cell phone usage on planes. GSync, $300 GPUs, and more. It's all coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 244, recorded November 21st, 2013. Gaming gets better, flying gets worse.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by IT Pro TV. Are you looking to upgrade your IT skills or prepare for certification? IT Pro TV offers engaging and informative tutorials streamed to your Roku, computer, or mobile device. For 50% off the lifetime of your account, go to itpro.tv/Twitch and use the code TWITCH50. And by Hulu Plus. Hulu Plus lets you binge on thousands of hit shows anytime, anywhere on your TV, PC, smartphone, or tablet. Visit huluplus.com/Twitch to start your free 2-week trial. That's huluplus.com/Twitch.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm your host, Patrick Norton, and this is the weekly show on Twitch. We aim to bring you the most useful, most knowledgeable, and at least, well, let me start this again, Bert, because apparently I don't have any knowledge about what we do here. In 3, 2. Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm your host, Patrick Norton, joined as always by Mr. Ryan Shrout, safe, tucked away in his old Kentucky home, or actually his old Kentucky office. Should we even admit that there are anything called computers and PC hardware and just face it that this is just the week of consoles here on Twitch, whether we like it or not?
There's a lot of console talk, but we do have an article that compares PCs that you can build to these consoles. So that's something.
I like that thought. Well, let's point out, PlayStation 4 launched last week. We got pretty in-depth in terms of what we know about PlayStation 4 versus Xbox One performance. Xbox One goes on sale at midnight tonight, starting at, midnight East Coast, ending at 3 a.m. East Coast, starting at 9:30 West Coast, ending at midnight, or starting at, math is hard, people. Time zones are worse. But the point is, basically, wherever you are in the United States at midnight tonight, you'll be able to buy an Xbox One. And this is interesting, the PC versus PlayStation 4 versus Xbox One hardware comparison, building a competing gaming PC. And it's funny when you think about the processing power in terms of the CPU that are in both these consoles versus the GPU power that is available, especially on the PlayStation 4. Mr. Ryan Shrout.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance that they took with both APUs. The GPU is far outweighing the CPU in both cases, even for the Xbox One, which has a lower powered GPU than the PS4. They went with Jaguar core processors, which are much smaller per core than what you would get with a Haswell from Intel or a Pile Driver from AMD that you get in like their FX series processors. But they still went with a lot of cores for a lot of threads, right? So you're still getting 8 cores. You're still getting the ability to run 8-thread applications, which is going to be good for balancing workloads, even if none of those workloads are going to be particularly high performance, or none of those threads at least will be particularly high performance compared to what we have in PCs today. Because even those cores, I think, are running at 1.6 gigahertz or 1.7 gigahertz, depending on which console it is. I don't remember which is which. But the GPUs are definitely taking up the vast majority of kind of die space and compute cycles.
It's funny because you take a look at it, and the thing that keeps coming back to me is GDR3 versus DDR5. That's pretty much a wash because of the additional cache on the Xbox One, which of course is running DDR3 instead of DDR5. But the thing that I've really been obsessing with over the last few days, especially after getting some hands-on time with the Xbox One, is the advantage the PlayStation 4 has in terms of shaders. So it's literally 50% more shaders, like 12 CUs to 18 CUs, 768 shaders on the Xbox One, 1152 shaders on the PlayStation 4. And then a subset of the shaders on the Xbox One are essentially dedicated to Kinect maintenance, or Kinect and operating system maintenance. It's interesting. There's a lot going on in the Xbox One compared to the PlayStation 4. PlayStation 4 is essentially a sports car, a supercar, if you will, that is dedicated to gaming and will also play Blu-rays once you download the Blu-ray playback application. It'll play DVDs. I have to correct because I said that the PlayStation 4 wouldn't play DVDs on Techzilla, and the rain is still falling down upon my skull on that one, and probably will continue for the rest of my natural life. But the Xbox One, right, it's going to unify your entertainment, or at least it's going to do an overlay for your, cable or satellite, and it's going to be the place where you watch videos. It's got, Microsoft's kind of DLNA variation going on there, but it's also got the Kinect, and the Kinect is soaking up, like, I've read as much as 10%, or Kinect and other overhead operations are taking like 10% of those shaders. So that's just given the PlayStation developers just have a huge advantage in the number of shaders they can throw at graphics problems or at calculating problems. It's an interesting decision, and I'm trying to decide why Microsoft was so comfortable with going with a considerably lower number of shaders. ...
So, I mean, there's a couple reasons why they would do that. Primary would be cost. Another issue could be trying to lower failure rates in the long term, which is kind of like reducing cost, I guess.
Reducing trauma, saving your reputation.
Level, yeah, the 10% level is if they're actually utilizing that much of the overall compute capability of the processor just on processing the Kinect input audio and video. That's a lot, considering it's already at a performance deficit, as you mentioned.
Right.
The downside for, I think, gamers in general, console gamers in general, is that unless you're talking about first-party exclusive titles, a game like Call of Duty or Battlefield 4 is still developing towards that lowest common denominator, right? And because of the similarities in architectures, they have a little bit more flexibility to develop something and then say, well, turn this knob, turn this knob, turn this knob, and now it looks better on the PS4. Just enable more anti-aliasing or something like that. That's a capability you have now that we have a kind of a generic base architecture for these parts. But it's still like for cross-platform titles, they're still going to be focused on what's the lowest performance part. We want to make sure that looks good and that's a good experience for the Xbox users before we start to focus on, well, how good can we make it for PlayStation users? As for, I don't know, I mean, they're obviously betting on more than just gaming.
Right.
And that's kind of been...
Or they're hoping on more than just gaming.
It's an odd thing for Microsoft, right? Because they got into Xbox, and it was people were like, man, it seems weird Microsoft would get into video games. And with the 360, they blew away the competition. Maybe not blew away, but they took a commanding lead, I think, in market share and mind share and all those areas. And now they're kind of, it gives me the impression, at least, that they're kind of like, well, we feel like we've kind of beat that market. Now let's move on to the next one, like the home entertainment area. And it creates a whole other set of issues. Like I was talking with Ken earlier, and he says, well, I don't have cable subscription. So the idea of having a pass-through with an overlay is kind of useless. So what do people do for that? Now it's just a gaming box?
Well, essentially, it's not entirely useless because they can do things. They can actually, it's mostly useless, but in a lot of ways. But they can actually, do the overlay for Hulu and some of the other online programming. There's some possibilities of some future interactivity available on that. It's a big giant window on your screen, and certainly they have enough computational graphics power inside there to do a whole bunch of interesting stuff with the overlay going into your system. But yeah, it's a really interesting. I mean, the thing is like, I don't have cable. Ken doesn't have cable. The vast majority of American households have cable or satellite television. Something in the neighborhood of, I want to say 75, 80 million U.S. households. So in that sense, as I think Ken and I are on the far end of the early adopter cable cutting curve. But it's a real, I mean, it's oops, did my mic go out?
Nope.
Okay. You had this look on your face. Now I couldn't decide if my mic was dead or if you're like, where are you going with this?
Some other confusion, but yeah.
I guess, but it's. I guess what I'm trying to say is like it's. Oh, edit point. I think Ken and I are actually on the far end of the curve, though, right? I think the majority of American households have cable or satellite TV. The idea of having the on live guide that'll be able to find stuff is really interesting. Being able to craft your way into a DVR functionality on that, right? Because there's no DVR functionality built into the Xbox One, and there really can't be with a 500 gigabyte hard drive. But I think for the vast majority of people that are buying these, they'll take advantage of that. And even if you don't have cable or satellite, there's some interesting possibilities there, either with online services, being able to search, I say Hulu and some of the other stuff is available in there. And moving forward, they could pull additional online streaming services into there to kind of bring that guide into place and take advantage of that. I mean, it's so early with both these consoles.
The reviews I saw talking about the voice controlled stuff sound really, really interesting. There's some interesting limitations behind it, but I'm excited to get the console in, hook it up to the, I have satellite service, so I'll be able to at least try it out and kind of see what those features actually turn out to be. So I'll be able to talk more about it next week, having a little bit firsthand experience. So.
Yeah, I was surprised with, I was surprised at how many people I know who've been playing with the Xbox One that are actually really enthralled with the Kinect functionality, which I did not expect, based to sort of people sort of either being really, really into it because they were dance game enthusiasts or not using it at all. Dance game enthusiasts and hackers seem to really love the original Kinect on the Xbox 360. One of the interesting things about the Xbox One is there's no user accessible hard drive upgrades. At this point, if you consider user accessible as something that the company actually engineered into the process or engineered into the product, PlayStation 4 taking a radically different approach to that. You did what a friend of mine did literally on the day he got his PlayStation 4, dropped an SSD into it. And it's interesting that instead of being like, hey, you can use an external USB 3.0 port when we turn it on, which is what the Xbox One is doing, on the PlayStation 4, you were able to actually load an SSD. What did you think of the stock hard drive versus an SSHD versus an SSD?
It was actually a really interesting kind of progression of data gathering, right? So at first, all we did was, I went to the midnight launch, I bought a couple of games, and then we had an SSHD and we had an SSD, and we kind of tested performance that way. And the SSD, in game load time, actually going from the menu to going from like the home screen to the first game menu, didn't see a drastic difference. And that's probably because when you install the disk-based version of the game, you're seeing load time from the disk. It's validating the disk, it's validating you have the license to play the game. So the main bottleneck is really the spin up time of the Blu-ray. Load times inside the actual game, like once you're already in the game and you're loading up a level or a save game, load times were drastically improved through an SSD. And then the SSHDs tend to like fall right in the middle of those two times from the stock drive to the SSD. So it was like a happy medium, especially considering the cost per gigabyte difference of these options, which is, the SSD was 78 cents per gigabyte, while the SSHD was 12 cents per gig. So that's a pretty big delta that you have to worry about in terms of price. So, if you're willing to spend more than $500 to get an SSD for your $400 game console that's a 1 terabyte SSD, that's probably not a good idea, would be my guess.
There are people, there are enthusiasts who have all of the money who don't mind spending it.
I would say the most interesting thing I saw, though, was like the next article where somebody, enough people pushed us in the comments to say, hey, could you test a downloaded version of this game? And I was like, it's going to be the same, not a problem. When we actually downloaded it and tested it, though, the downloaded game loads were significantly faster than the disk-based loads. Even though you're installing content from the disk. I don't know why that is. I don't. It must be. It's something related to the disk being in the drive, right? It's checking it for DRM reasons, or it's checking it for other things. So I don't really know, but
yeah, it's funny. Like it's faster, but it's still only like 30% faster for a lot of games. Is that the general rule of thumb at this point?
Say again. It was
around 30% faster, or no?
Yeah, no, it was. And because I tested mostly for this second iteration, kind of Assassin's Creed 4 save game load times, and that was kind of the difference there. It was, I don't know, it's definitely faster. So you've got to install the games anyway. Downloading it may be the best option if you're worried about performance and access times and load times. And there's a whole lot more discussion there about what may happen to SSHDs when you cycle through that rather small 8 GB cache and how that affects, load time performance and stuff. So I expect people to go check that out because it's more complicated than we have time to really discuss in a 1-hour show. So,
well, at that point,
to get out are like that. Yeah.
Oh man, Scott wrote up AMD's Holiday Game Plus GPU bundles. I think he's in the chat room right now. Quote, after many complaints from the community about the lack of availability of graphics cards that actually had the Battlefield 4 bundle included with them, AMD is attempting to clarify the situation. In a statement sent through email, AMD says the previous information sent to press was not clear and has led to some confusion, which is definitely the case. While it was implied that all customers that bought R9 series graphics cards would get a free copy of Battlefield 4 when purchased on or after November 13th, the truth is that, quote, add-in board partners ultimately decide which select AMD Radeon R9 SKUs will include a copy of Battlefield 4. So what do? Scott says AMD is trying hard to set up a landing page at http:// because I love reading all the letters, AMD.com/Battlefield 4 that will give gamers clear and absolute listings of which R9 series cards include the free copy of the game in the next day or two. Man, bundles can be heartbreaking when they don't.
This is by far the most complicated one I've ever had to deal with, and it doesn't need to be that way. I don't know. Something odd happened between EA and AMD on this one where they didn't get as many keys as they were hoping they were going to get, or EA wanted more money than AMD thought they were going to charge for it, and so they couldn't bring as many to the table. I've never seen it be so specific to which SKUs of that particular part are going to get a bundle and then have all this confusion about which ones are going to get it anyway, right? So if it's not very clear, like a press release, then you need to have some kind of information base. And even today now, so it's been a full week or more since this is released, and of their 8 partners that they have listed on that website, only 2 of them actually have links to information pages about which specific SKUs and which specific retail outlets you can actually buy them from. So it's a pretty massive failure on AMD's part. They're trying to make up for it with that giveaway, but I don't know if you're going to be able to get those keys to the right people at the right amount of time. So
hasn't AMD given us enough by just giving us superior graphics performance at a lower price point, thus driving incredible anti-aliasing into all of our living rooms in time for Christmas, Ryan? Haven't they?
No.
Haven't they?
No, not yet. Not yet.
The hardest man in GPU reviews, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsor, IT Pro TV. itpro.tv/Twitch, and use the offer code Twitch50. You're going to get something cool. We want to, well, if you're a fan of Twitch, right, you know a lot about technology. Chances are that you're already acting as the IT guy for your friends and family. Sound familiar? Have you ever thought about working in IT professionally? It can be difficult to know where to start, what to study, and what certs you need to validate your skills and get yourself hired. If you're already an IT professional, you know the world of IT is constantly changing. Vendors release new tech and new certifications for the new technology all the time, and it can be super difficult to keep up. IT Pro TV is a video network dedicated exclusively to the world of information technology. Whether you're looking to jumpstart a career in IT or you're already working in the field, IT Pro TV supplements traditional learning methods in a fun and engaging way that maximizes your learning and prepares you for the certification exams. So, if you're in an environment where you need the certification exams to move forward in your career to get a better job, IT Pro TV can help you with that. They get over 100 hours of content, 20 hours added each week. Video courses on CompTIA, Microsoft, Cisco, and more. Security, laptop repair, VLAN, subnetting, what they do is they organize the library by exam objectives. The idea is they want to make it easy to target the areas you need to successfully pass the certification tests. Shows are streamed live and they're also available on demand worldwide to your Roku, computer, or mobile device, HD or SD quality, and one low monthly price gives you all access membership with constant updates. It's roughly the cost of a study guide and way much cheaper than going to an IT boot camp. No hassle. There's an easy cancellation policy, and there's also direct interaction with the host via live chat during the show and web-based Q&As specific to the topic being studied. If you're thinking about a career in IT, or if you're in IT and you're looking for a little help moving ahead, check out itpro.tv/twitch and upgrade your brain with the most popular certifications recognized by employers. There's a free preview on the site if you want to check out some of their videos or the live stream. Subscriptions are normally $57 a month or $570 for the entire year, but we have a special offer because they're huge fans of Twitch. If you sign up between now and the end of the year using the code TWITCH50, you'll receive 50% off your subscription for the lifetime of your account. That's a big deal, people. $28.50 per month or $285 for a year. That's half off. itpro.tv/twitch and use the code TWITCH50 to receive 50% off. And we want to thank IT Pro TV for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware.
Very cool.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's actually a great deal. I normally don't go to the Wall Street Journal for my technology news, but Ryan and I had so much fun wailing over the future of flying in the United States. U.S. to consider cell phone use on planes. People have been talking about this forever. But finally, according to the Wall Street Journal, the Federal Communications Commission said it will soon propose allowing passengers to use their cell phones at airplanes, setting up a debate that will pit the technically possible against the socially tolerable. And that is a direct quote from the Wall Street Journal. And I think it's great because Ryan and I are considerably less worried about the plane falling out of the sky than sitting next to that guy or that gal for a freaking 4.5-hour flight.
Quite intolerable. Yeah.
Fortunately, it'll be up to the airlines whether or not to allow them. And
I don't understand the technological capability of this, right? Like they're not talking about, right? They're talking about cell phone usage.
They're talking about actual cell phone usage. If I understand this correctly, and I have not researched this deeply, but essentially, I believe what you have is something like the equivalent of a cell phone booster. You know, where like a Wilson booster, where there's sort of a receiving and transmitting antenna in the fuselage, inside the fuselage, connects to a device or an antenna outside the fuselage. You know, it's funny because like the FCC banned cell phone usage in planes back in 1991.
Wow. And
it's crazy. Like the Wall Street Journal says that when the FCC made a similar proposal to lift the restriction in 2004, it received more than 8,000 comments. You know, the FAA has already said that cell phones pose, you know, cell phones are, FAA says, use your cell phone. But the FCC holds the regulations. It's interesting. The people either really don't care or really excited about the idea of increasing their productivity or being able to talk to their kids or their boyfriend or girlfriend, or just absolutely horrified by the idea of being on the only thing that can possibly make a plane ride worse is a plane ride with everybody talking on their cell phones.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awfully small contained area to have a bunch of conversations going on. You know, I see I try not to be one that wants to impede the improvement of technology because of social constructs, right? So if somebody can use the phone and they need to use the phone,
polite and decent.
Yeah, right. You know, they've had phones on planes for a while, right? Remember when they had them in the back of the seat in front of you, and you had to use a credit card, but it cost $3 a minute or whatever it was. So that capability has been there. They just never really, it was never an option because it was so expensive. Now, if they did this, it wouldn't be expensive. I mean, I guess they could charge for it just like they do GoGo.
Well, it's funny, like Delta and United both basically said that they received a lot of feedback from passengers that it really don't want this to happen, which I thought was kind of fascinating. Or
yeah,
just
I'd be
maybe
still.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It could be really interesting to walk onto a plane and see everybody like, you know, playing either a Angry Birds, interconnected or something. It's or Snapchatting, like
That would be
strange.
Hey, that's data use, right? So you could probably still do that. I don't know.
Oh my goodness. Lightning cables are still ridiculously expensive, but USB 3.0 continues to get more inexpensive. If you've been looking for a USB 3.0 hub, and oddly enough, I am in that camp, the Hulu HDUH 006 7-port USB hub is a bargain. Ryan, you wrote this up for PC Per. $35 for 7 ports. This sounds like a fantastic deal compared to some of the ones I've seen.
It's a good value. I mean, it's a 7-port USB 3 hub. Like, that's kind of the end of the review, right?
And it worked.
It worked, right? It performs just fine. It's got like a VIA controller in there. With one device hooked up to it, we were able to max out the SSD performance. So that seemed fine. Obviously, if you're going to have 7 devices hooked up to it, they're not all going to be able to run at maximum USB 3 speed. You're still going into one USB 3 port, so your connectivity levels are going to be limited there. It comes with a 5-volt AC power adapter, but they say it's optional, right? So they say you shouldn't need it unless you're using high power devices. So things like external USB hard drives. If you have a couple of those on there, that's going to draw power. You're going to need to install that AC adapter there. If you're just using thumb drives, you're probably going to be fine, or mice or keyboards or something like that. You'll probably be fine without the AC adapter. The only kind of drawback to it I found is that it's not a good charging unit, right? So one of the things I thought is, oh, cool, I'll put this on my desk, and then we have tablets and phones that we test all the time. I'll just be able to connect them and charge them. But I bought like a little USB inline power meter, and all the ports at most were putting out 0.4 amps, 0.46 amps of power, even when connected to like an iPad that is definitely trying to draw more than that. So not the best solution for that. I haven't found a great solution for that. So it's not necessarily a knock against this product, the Hutu, if you will. But it is, it's still something I'm looking for, like in a high-powered USB kind of splitter hub, whatever you want to call it. But for $35, for me, what I did with this was I set it on my desk. I used a little double-sided tape on the bottom of it because it's so light. It kind of moves around really easy. But set that on my desk so that I can easily swap in thumb drives and card readers and stuff like that as I tend to do throughout the day. So again, $35, it works. So I mean, what else do you need for $35? I don't know.
Apparently more amperage.
It's got lights and stuff,
It blinks. Does it blink when you're transferring data?
It does not blink, which is probably good.
Oh.
It just lights up when you have connectivity. So
sometimes there's just too many lights on your average computer desktop. ClickPad 2.0. Synaptics, probably know that name from, touchpads. Also do touch screens. Touch interpretation software have a pair of new technologies, ClickPad 2.0 and TypeCard. And 2.0, I'm sorry?
Type guard, not card.
Oh.
It's protection. The idea is to guard.
It's the wrist thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Did I say type card?
I thought you did. You did.
Can I blame the braces? And Burke throwing another edit point. Oh my goodness. 3, 2. Synaptics got a couple of new technologies they're starting to share with everybody. Or actually, we say ClickPad 2.0, which they're saying improves the company's design, and TypeGuard, which they claim is a 73% reduction in your wrist doing false control of your touchpad while you type or otherwise use your laptop when you're not using the touchpad. It's interesting. You've always felt that Apple was doing kind of a better job with big giant touchpads than most of the PC vendors were, and Synaptics is trying to close that gap with TypeGuard and ClickPad 2.0. Have you had a chance to get hands-on with it, Ryan?
I have not. So they're going to be showing a couple of models now at CES this coming January that integrate both of these technologies in the same device. The HP, what was it called? The Elite 13, something like that. A Spectre 13, the HP Spectre 13 Ultrabook. It's like a $999 Ultrabook, not super high hardware specs, but it does have this like enormous trackpad on it that integrates both these technologies. ClickPad, so it's supposed to be a, well, you know, you use a MacBook Air, you know that like the trackpad on that is like, it's the gold standard of trackpads.
Yeah.
I use PC laptops exclusively, but I have had MacBooks in the past, and that's like the one thing you immediately miss about using any other laptop. So the ClickPad 2 is supposed to improve that with things like even button feel, even button weight throughout the trackpad at any point. And then the type guard is supposed to prevent issues where when you're actually typing and using your laptop, where your wrists or your palms or your thumbs will kind of hover over the trackpad, they'll touch the trackpad, and introduce like false inputs, false mouse swipes and scrolls and clicks and things like that. And so it's a really difficult problem, like algorithmically, for somehow a trackpad to know that there is a difference between when I mean to move my finger across it and when I don't mean to move my finger across it. So, whatever the magic is to do that, I would appreciate it if they would bring those to PCs sooner rather than later.
Oh my goodness. We should probably take a moment to thank our second sponsor this evening, Hulu. Do you want to take that one, Ryan?
Yeah, I can absolutely do that. So holidays are coming up. It's going to be a busy time, and getting to watch all of your TV shows is going to be difficult. And maybe you're one of those people that wants to be secluded inside another room away from your family. And you can do this by signing up for Hulu Plus. You've probably already tried Hulu.com. Hulu Plus, though, is a lot more. With Hulu Plus, you can watch your favorite shows anytime, anywhere. Hulu Plus lets you watch thousands of hit TV shows and movies in the living room or on the go on your smartphone or tablet. So if you're hiding in the closet, you can still access all this great content. With Hulu Plus, you can watch your favorite TV shows like Jimmy Kimmel Live, Shark Tank, Family Guy, SNL. That's cool. You can watch every episode of shows like Lost, Doctor Who, Community, Star Trek. You can also check out, they have exclusive content now, like Hulu Originals, The Wrong Man's, Behind the Mask, and they have actually a new docu-series that takes you inside the world of sports mascots. Well, that's Behind the Mask. That sounds really interesting. Inside the world of sports mascots. I bet that's something that would be pretty interesting to see. You'll also get access to ad-free movies and kid content. For only $7.99 a month, you can catch up on current shows, binge on old favorites, or catch a great movie. Stream as many TV shows and movies as you want, wherever you want. Right now, you can try Hulu Plus free for 2 weeks when you go to huluplus.com/Twitch. That's a special offer for our listeners. Make sure you use huluplus.com/Twitch so you get the extended free trial and that they know that we sent you. That's kind of important too. It's a really, really great service. I think it's worth signing up for this and getting that 2-week trial and seeing how it implements into your life. I think you'll find that if you're a busy person, being able to watch these types of shows on your schedule will make a world of difference. So that's huluplus.com/Twitch. We thank Hulu Plus for their support of Twit, our show, and everybody else on the network. And we hope you enjoy watching instantly with Hulu Plus.
Email us, people. We love to hear from you at Twitch at twit.tv, at Ryan Strider, at Patrick Norton. If you want to track us down on Twitter, we got an email from, hope I'm saying this right, Dushin, about $300 GPU options. Says he's planning to build a new desktop system. Looking at the GPUs, the R9 280X on the AMD side, the GTX 770 on the NVIDIA side, which one would be the better performer for value and longevity? Any other suggestions with a budget about $300, and any suggestions on manufacturers?
He already knew the right answer, right? The R9 280X is probably the best performer for well, that's actually 280X is, yeah, it's $299. Yeah, that's the best option. That's the highest performance option for that price point, without a doubt. The GTX 770 is, I think it's about that same. I think it might be $329. It's a little bit more expensive. It's not as fast of a video card, but it has some other benefits. It's a little bit more efficient architecture. And I think the 770 still comes with 3 games if you buy it now as well. So if you want Assassin's Creed 4, Batman, Arkham Origins, and the third one escapes me again. I don't know. Now I feel bad. I totally missed out on it. But you'll get 3 relatively new PC games. You don't have to worry about it being old or outdated or anything like that. So that's, if you consider that part of your value, like those are games that you might be purchasing anyway, then take that into consideration. Either one of those cards is going to be a good choice. As far as which vendors, man, they all have different ups and downs. Like just, I guess, pick a design that you like. Asus makes really cool custom cards, no pun intended there, but they have, custom cool designs for both AMD and NVIDIA cards. So they're a good outlet to check out. But then, I mean, MSI makes the Lightning series. If you want to look at, they have a Lightning 770 as well. It's probably going to be more expensive than the $329 level, but in terms of like over engineering stuff, that's a pretty good option too. And on the AMD side, you've got Sapphire and Power Color, but again, Asus makes really good AMD options as well. So I think the 280X would probably be where I would go, but the GTX 770 has a lot of positives, especially if you like those particular games. It's Assassin's Creed, Batman, and Splinter Cell. I finally found the page, so that's your third game.
Mel wants to know about the effects of G-Sync going forward. It says, with the advent of NVIDIA's G-Sync technology, will upgrading video cards beyond the insanity of a 780 Ti or AMD R290 be relevant anymore in the near future? I mean, if 60 frames per second is the sweet spot for most people like me, then what will be the point of upgrading video cards any further when tearing, stuttering, and lag are no longer an issue? Well, 4K.
Right. There's, as there has been in the monitor world for a while, there's kind of like 2 paths you go on. It used to be higher resolution versus higher refresh rate. That's still basically the 2 pathways, but now it's like higher resolution or this kind of variable refresh rate, because these variable refresh rates are going to be limited to 1080p for the foreseeable future, probably at least the first quarter of 2014, maybe the first half of 2014. So I think the premise of the question is, if you have like a super high-end graphics card, then what's the point of it with something like G-Sync? And the idea of G-Sync is not that you always hit 60 frames per second. Like, you can do that with a standard monitor, right? As long as you peg at 60 frames per second, you wouldn't have any of these issues. But if you want to run at 120 frames per second, that's a good target for one of these high-end cards. And 120 frames per second is definitely going to feel probably different to people than 60 frames per second, refresh rate rather, on the monitor. But with G-Sync, you'd be able to scale between 60 and 120 fluidly without seeing tearing or stuttering, whereas that's not the case with traditional V-Sync, right? So you'd either run at 120 or you'd run at 60, and when you drop below 120, you would see that kind of stutter and fall back in frame rates. So I don't think these super high-end cards become in any way invalidated because of technologies like G-Sync. They're approaching the problem a little bit differently now. That makes any sense? I don't know.
No, I'm with you. Taylor in the chat room, one more question before we go. Taylor in the chat room says, Patrick, the PlayStation 4 is equivalent to a supercar. Is there any way we can get the PlayStation 4 like hardware in our computers sooner? Is the hardware we have sufficient? Now, and I should put my statement that the PlayStation 4 is a supercar into context. Out of the 2 consoles, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 feels more like a gaming performance machine, right? I liked what one of the things that Nan said is he didn't really notice a difference in screen resolution so much between the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, but he noticed that the PlayStation 4 had more anti-aliasing going on, that maybe things were going on that would make it feel smoother or less jarring to the eye. And that's one of the advantages that the PlayStation 4 has, because it has so many freaking shaders, right? 1152 shaders to the 768 inside of the Xbox One, and that advantage is not going away. The Xbox One, in a lot of ways, is like a minivan or an SUV, where it's like it's hauling a lot of stuff around. It's got the Kinect. It's got the ability to connect your DLNA server. It's got the ability to. It's got it's gonna be your Blu-ray player. It's gonna be your DVD player. It's gonna put this really cool guide on your cable or satellite subscription to make it really easy to find the shows you want to watch. It's going to allow you to wave around with your hands like you just don't care. So in that sense, there are two very radical different approaches to a console, and Sony is very much gone like, we're gaming and we're going to support Blu-ray and everything else we'll figure out later, right? While the Xbox One is trying to do all sorts of stuff. Now, in terms of getting PlayStation 4 like hardware in your computer soon, you can do it now. Go buy a 7000 series graphics card. Go buy a 270X. Go buy or an R9 270. And chances are, if you have a Core i5 or even maybe a Core i3, you may actually Core i5. I'm going to say it's going to have more computing power or CPU power than the Jaguar cores inside of the PlayStation 4. You're not going to build it for the same amount of money, but then again, as Ryan points out on PC Per, you can do a whole lot more with the PC than you can do with a console, just because you can put anything you want. You can put any operating system you can want. You can load any software you want on there. Yep. So it's interesting to watch. They're two very different machines, and it's very early in the development of both machines. And a lot of how the experience is going to totally depend on how good the developers and the infrastructure that Sony and Microsoft have set up to enable developers to make cool stuff for you to do on those boxes. So
agree. Very good.
Oh my goodness. Should we do one more question before we go?
Yeah, that's fine. And then the next question on that list, if we're going to go with Matt, is not. I'll read it real quick. He says he basically mentioned, he was talking about an effective frames per second. He saw that some websites are still using the old-fashioned FPS measurement, while others are doing frame time and FCAT methods. He was wondering if there would be a way to combine these into an effective FPS for GPUs by measuring the actual number of frames. So you could start with the regular FPS number, subtract off frames that aren't fully rendered on the display, like tearing and run frames, and ones that are too close together to be displayed, and come up with like a new metric for this, like an eFPS. And I only put this in here because obviously Matt is not aware of the stories that we published on PCPer.com about titled frame rating that do exactly this. If you look at on our graphs, we don't call it eFPS, we call it observed frame rate. If you look at the graphs that are observed frame rate, it does exactly that. We take the frame rate as reported by Fraps, essentially, and then we take away all the stuff that we consider not adding to the game experience. Run frames, drop frames, those other kinds of anomalies that sometimes occur, like with Eyefinity and Crossfire. And it takes all those out of the picture, and we give you an actual observed frame rate. This is what we believe the user is experiencing and feeling while they're gaming, right? And so Burke brought up a bunch of, if you go to PCPer.com and search frame rating, you can't miss it. They're all over the place. Exactly. So we're doing just this, and I think he brought up, his email was a little bit longer and mentions why he thinks this is a good idea and what other things it may be able to address. And obviously I agree, because this is something that we've been integrating since, I don't remember now, a while. I mean, that's exactly what we attempt to do, and that's why our GPU reviews are more work than they used to be, for sure. But I think the data is worthwhile.
There you have it. That's pretty much going to be it for this episode of This Week in Computer Hardware. We may not have a giant GPU release for next week, but I promise there will be considerably less console conversation. Ryan's like, I'm not saying anything about anything. If you have any Black Friday questions above and beyond, we don't know where the deals are, and we advise you to shop online rather than getting your ribs staved in by angry teenagers at the mall early Friday morning after you get your turkey on. But if you have any holiday shopping questions, start firing them out to Twitch, TWICH at twit.tv. And I have to actually go do a live, help the Rev3 Games crew out with a live broadcast. 3 glorious hours of Xbox One conversation.
Nice.
I'm actually excited. It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch people who can really play games play the games.
It's not us.
No. No, actually, yeah. Penny Arcade. They own it on the on the comic gaming front commentary on why you should keep your gaming to yourself. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight, everybody. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Trout.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.